This video is brought to you by GameMaker. And if you've ever wanted to get into game development, GameMaker does this really crazy thing where it's free. Just start making and only pay when you want to release your game to the world commercially.
It's fast, it's user-friendly, and there's easy-to-follow tutorials, plus a dedicated community to help answer even my questions. How make man jump? GameMaker is a 2D game engine that's helped bring some of yours and my favorite recent experiences to life, like UFO 50, Chicory, Anton Blast, and of course, Yahtzee's own Starstruck Vagabond.
Ooh, we talking about GameMaker? I love that program, it's so easy to use. As well as Starstruck Vagabond, I also used it to make all 12 projects in my 12 games in 12 months Dev Diary challenge. And I couldn't believe how much sex I got out of that. None. I got none at all. Which I couldn't believe.
So what are you waiting for? Head on over to the GameMaker link in the description and start cracking away today, because we want to play your game.
Yeah, looking through this list, I'm seeing one of you made Armpit Fart Tycoon, and I've got several questions for you. Hello, and welcome to Dev Heads, the podcast focused on the ins, outs, and goings on of game development, with host experience ranging from indie, double, to triple A. I'm your indie representative, Jay, here from Second Wind, and I'm joined by my wonderful two co-hosts. We got Tina.
Hey, I am triple A, I think.
You think? She's not sure this week. She remembered the breadth of her experience expanded beyond just 3 letters.
I make games, yeah.
And
I'm Mikey, and I guess I represent double A.
Yeah. Now I'm second guess whether I represent indie.
We should have Eric put A's next to our faces that correspond with our experience.
As a constant all the comments, guys, we hear you. You're saying, it's so confusing. Who represents what? We're addressing your feedback. We're very grateful for it. I think one of the things we've learned as we've done this since last year, it was, to me, is like we're more similar than we're different in a lot of ways. We deal with the same problems across all scales of production, with their own differences, but it's pretty similar in a lot of ways.
Scale and hoops to jump through is my my takeaway.
Yeah.
The difference between the stuff. Same problems, different amount of hoops,
and different production levels. I think, like specifically, the production department is like vastly different between those 3. I'd say that's a big, 100%, big differentiator.
100%. So, our audience, full transparency, we did have a guest, but they had to back out because of reasons, which is completely fine. You know, people have their own lives. We can't just, hold people down and be like, come on our fucking podcast, as much as we wish we could. So we've had to pivot to a topic that I think is very topical. This is something you brought to the table, I believe, Mikey, which is something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Can you give us a breakdown of what you want to chat about today?
Dude, Spectre Divide shutting down. Spectre Divide was a tactical FPS that just came out. I forget how long ago it was, but it's only been like sub 8 months, I'm pretty sure. Less than a year for sure. Shroud was a supporter of the team. I believe it was a bunch of ex-Respawn people, right, Tina?
There's 2 ex-Respawn.
There's 2?
Okay.
September 3rd, 2024.
Yeah. So it hasn't been that long. And the studio is shutting down too. And it's a damn shame that so many different multiplayer shooters are trying interesting things. Spectre Divide had a cool core loop thing of being able to have like sort of a second life and teleport back to it in the middle of a match. It had an awesome aesthetic. If you like Ghost in the Shell type stuff, it looked rad. I guess I should say like 90s anime, like Ghost in the Shell.
So are you shocked by the news, Mike?
I'm not too surprised, because I just understand how difficult the climate is right now. But I am a little sad because it's just another reminder of how volatile the space is right now. I thought the game was cool, and also it just I know that the waves, the effects of this are just gonna they're just gonna amplify the vibes that are already so bad that it's gonna want to make people take fewer risks on things such as this. It's going to be used as an example of investors thinking, well, we can't invest there. Like, look what happened to this project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, between Concord and this and other studios. So, Spectre Divide was created by a studio called Mountaintop Games. They were funded, I believe, by one of the original creators of Oculus. Maybe he was the sole creator. I'm not really sure, but he had a
Palmer
lot of
Luckey, maybe.
he had a lot of Facebook money. I believe that's his name. And I remember after the team shipped Apex Legends, this guy was trying to heavily recruit, some of the designers that I worked with, and the goal was to make a battle royale shooter initially. And I believe that, he was successful in recruiting a couple people. I know of two that came from the Apex team. One designer and the MTX designer of Apex went over.
Mm.
And I believe the MTX designer ended up becoming the game director of this game, which is kind of a fascinating jump.
Yeah, that's one hell of a jump.
Yeah. And
I'm looking at the. Oh, carry on, Tina.
no, go ahead. You're looking at.
Well, I'm looking at the gameplay, and it looks really interesting. I like the art style. I love the aesthetic. The gameplay looks tight, but I'm maybe thinking that was an issue with this marketing because one, I love shooters. I work in games media. I hadn't heard of this. I didn't know this existed. Like when you were like, this game shut down, I'm like, oh, have they shut down a game that is about to come out and they've pulled funding or something? But then you're like, it's been out for 8 months. And I'm like, has it?
And I think this is a part of the problem. There are other second wind people that didn't seem to know about this when I brought it up. And by the way, we're not specifically talking about just Spectre Divide. We're talking about like the space in general. But,
the space, yeah.
But I think this is a part of the shitty situation we all find ourselves in. It's so saturated right now.
Oh yeah,
it's so saturated. There's a lot of reasons I think why that has happened, but I really feel for the new projects that are not just multiplayer shooters, but in general, but especially multiplayer shooters, and how hard it is to get noticed. And I think that's part of the reason why somebody like you just didn't know about it. It kind of makes sense because so much other stuff can dominate headlines, and it's really difficult to get noticed.
Well,
Especially
we're
the
watching
big companies, right?
We're watching the trailer right now, right? We're watching the art style.
This is some gameplay. I don't know if it's a trailer. Yeah.
You see the map. To be quite honest, I don't really understand. Just quick glance, right? If I was like churning my head and looked, I wouldn't know if this is Valorant. I wouldn't know if this is X Defiant. I wouldn't really know if it's some other shooter. Like it has some elements of UI that are similar to COD. It's difficult because a lot of shooters have now turned into free to play games, right? So you're not buying a box copy of a shooter anymore. And the reason for that makes sense on paper. And when you go free to play, you're basically telling the player base to stay there, to have their friends play with them, because multiplayer games live or die by the population, right? If there's no one playing your multiplayer game, you're not going to matchmake as quickly as you would if there was a ton of people playing your game. So let's take away that element of you have to pay for a box copy, to hang out with friends and collaborate. But then the question becomes, okay, well, how do you make money if you release a free-to-play game? And a lot of these shooters, start selling skins, weapon camos, because there's a fine line between wanting to sell an aesthetic versus selling something that gives somebody like an advantage on the battlefield. And you don't want to do that because a lot of people will get very angry if you can just pay to win. And so when you have a lot of games that are free to play, then it becomes a question of, okay, well, which one do I play? And
where do you put your time?
Yes,
your unlocks and everything.
And I've thought a lot about this because you both know that I've worked in primarily shooters, and competing in that space is one thing. There's so many reasons for this. It's hard to boil down to just one. So I know we made like a list of like issues that we could tackle today. The first one being the free-to-play MTX model. it's man.
I feel like
I wanna-
yeah, carry on, Mikey.
Sorry, there's a comment in the chat, so I just wanted to call that out. I think it's funny. Miss Sultan Studios, the developer of Xfil, a multiplayer shooter, is very curious to see our takes. I think I know you, Xfil. I even have a note in one of my notepad docs to reach out to you because I found your game, I think, during the Next Fest, which is one of the only ways that people can get noticed if you're going to be a shooter, especially, and a multiplayer one at that.
Really?
I was actually just checking your. Yeah. The Steam Next Fest has a surprising amount of FPS games that I feel like if it didn't exist, people would just never know about them. Another good example is these are people that I know, to be transparent, but a Swedish shooter called Striden. If you guys have heard of that,
Never
probably
heard of
not,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got it. We're showing some Xfil footage now. Maybe after we could do some Striden. Striden is set in I think it's like 70s, 80s Sweden during a post-apocalyptic disaster where people are still fighting. Like there's a lot of Battlefield inspiration to the gameplay. There's some interesting, I guess you could say, extraction or battle royale mechanics to it. It's a pretty cool game, and the aesthetic is really strong. I feel like a lot of these games need to lean into their aesthetic to get that notice, just like Spectre Divide did, and it's difficult and challenging. But anyway, I just wanted to call that out, Xfil. Xfil, yes, we are talking about your problem and challenge that you face, and we hear you. It's a really difficult world out there right now.
So,
Yeah,
Mikey,
100%.
so far I've heard you talk about art aesthetic as like a reason for games maybe not doing well, but also the marketing, right? And those are two big topics we could go on for,
I have some
a little
others
while
as
on.
well.
As well.
To add, yeah, I think one of the issues, especially with the free-to-play model, and I made a video on this on why these aren't military shooters, but why Marvel Rivals as a hero shooter was beating out Overwatch. And one of those aspects was the nature of the competitive scene and how a lot of these free-to-play games that are trying to be like Valorant are really trying to push the competitive nature of the game because that's where we're going to get a lot of advertising of teams playing.
So you're talking
we're gonna
about
get
esports and skill
like
set.
esports,
The type of player you're in. Okay.
yeah, like the type of player you're trying to attract with that kind of market, and also the community you're trying to foster with that. You kind of hit this plateau where if you're Valorant, for example, I have friends who play Valorant, and they hit this plateau where they're like, I've hit the point where everyone I'm playing against is super sweaty, and I just can't play because they just kill me too quick. And you also have the other problem, which is pro players or players who are into those twitchy shooters who want to play competitively. They have to pick a game to get good at. Like, they're not going to play 5 different games or shooters and be okay at all of them. They're going to pick one and play it to death, and that's probably going to be the one that has the highest player base, has the best community for competitive play, which at the moment is probably Valorant.
It was interesting you say that because
yeah.
now you're talking about skill-based matchmaking or a reason for it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one too because a lot of the veteran shooter players online tend to sway against skill-based matchmaking because they want to feel overpowered. They enjoy the feeling of just dominating a lobby. And for most of the players that are on the other end of that, they will walk away and they potentially may not boot your game again.
Yeah, it's dangerous, right? Because what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize incubating new players, or do you prioritize keeping your core audience happy? And for me, that's one of the reasons why ranked play exists, so people can play in those sweaty lobbies. But I'm an advocate that I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this. I think skill-based matchmaking is a good thing, to a degree. Like, I think booting into a game for the first time and just getting absolutely dominated by effectively a pro player is a very quick way to have people shut your game down, like you said, Tina. And I don't think that's good for your community. I don't think that's good for your new players. And I obviously don't think it's healthy for your, high tier players as well. Just stomping noobs in quick plays. Just, do something else, mate.
We're watching a trailer of X Defiant right now, right? Is that what this
Who
is?
knows? This might be
This one?
Valorant.
No, this looks like Valorant to me. Hold on.
Oh,
See,
okay.
this is
Valorant.
part of the
Valorant
problem.
to me.
It's Valorant. Okay.
Look at all the
Yes,
colors.
the
because of
problem.
the abilities. Yes, no, it is Valorant. Yeah.
We can't tell what we're looking at. And this is like one of the biggest shooters in the world. And we're like,
Well, it's interesting
"What
because
game is this?"
Valorant has, there's hero abilities
Yeah.
in this one. There's some shooters that don't have that.
Yeah, I would say Valorant has cut out a good niche for itself. Some could argue, oh, it's derivative of Counter-Strike, or it's too much of Riot's identity imposed onto a round-based shooter the style. But I think Tina's right. Like the abilities being there do let it stand apart at least a little bit.
But the game you mentioned in the beginning, Spectre, had abilities as well, right? So
Yeah, it had some interesting. Yeah.
but it didn't work out. So
Right.
this topic is so deeply ingrained in something I deeply care about, because it also is impacting a lot of my friends and colleagues that are still working in shooters, to the point where some of them are very anxious and fearful of the new games that they're working on
Yeah.
that aren't even announced yet. And so, like I said, like we can go in a ton of different directions. I just want to focus and make sure that we cover every single one as much as possible and give each topic its own due process. So we talked about the free-to-play model, right? But what I wanted to finish off the free-to-play model category with is that when you're downloading a game as a player at home, right? A lot of these games now have huge memory requirements that go with it, right? So you're downloading like, I don't know, like 80 to 100 gigs of whatever. When you delete that to get another shooter, that's a huge cost on the person that owns that game. Like how are you going to influence them to remove stuff from their hard drive in order to get this other thing that people are playing or potentially may want to try to play? So like the download size has a huge impact on what games shooter fans want to play, whether we like it or not. Like Fortnite is always going to be a potential staple. Call of Duty is always going to be a potential staple. Battlefield may always be a potential staple. How do you compete against those big ones? And what do you provide that's different? And right now, when you look at games like Concord or Spectre Divide or X Defiant, a lot of them pull from games that already exist, right? Like there was comparisons made with Concord and Overwatch and all the other games that are out there, and it's like, okay, well, that's cool, but what's drawing me in? And that's the part that's crazy, because it could go in a billion different directions. Like we already mentioned art design. We didn't talk about character design yet. We could talk about map layout. We could talk about the networking and performance. There's a player base issue with retention and growth, which we kind of touched on already.
Yeah.
With what kind of audience you're trying to grow. There's weapon and ability balancing. That's a huge thing to deal with. Culling toxicity, moderating your game is a big one. How often you drop content updates or even bug fixes. The control scheme can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And one of the bigger ones is like time to kill. Like what kind of player
it's huge.
is playing a game.
Time to kill's huge.
And it's just, there's so much. And I want to make sure we cover all of these. And probably the best way to go into it is just going like down the list. Did you guys have anything else to add to the free-to-play model?
I have a little bit of something to add to the free-to-play stuff, unless Mikey has something to also add.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I think the free-to-play model is a double-edged sword, in the sense of it can be extremely advantageous to allowing a wider audience to access your game with no cost to entry, but also be a death nail in keeping people in your game, because with a free-to-play model, you need to monetize your game in a certain way, as Tina was explaining with. Yes, you need to pay the bills, so you need to have skins, almost likely nowadays battle passes, and then attaching certain aspects of that to progression. So one of the examples is early Overwatch 2, putting characters full characters in the battle pass, so you had to play for a certain amount of time to unlock the characters. This is really bad because the game's free, like a lot of games are nowadays in this genre. So when your friends are all playing the game and they're ahead of you because you've had to work, right? Let's say you work a really stressful job, like in the games industry, and you can't play as much as your friends. They all are mostly through the battle pass and have all the characters unlocked. You have done nothing. You now feel as though you are behind your friends in play and you are never going to catch up. So your drive to then play that game diminishes, right? I'm never going to catch up mechanically, skill wise, or aesthetically with all of these, things unless I drop a lot of money. So it really disincentivizes players to continue. They're like, oh, well, I want to just go play something else. Like if you OG Call of Duty multiplayer, progression was a thing, but you could come back to it, every evening and play some, and it felt holistic within that system. But
how
with
old
battle
school are we
passes, it's
talking?
always moving forward.
Yeah.
How far back?
It's
Call
like-
of Duty, because I'm thinking about I'm thinking
10
about
years.
fucking Call of Duty United Offensive, the expansion for Call of Duty 1, adding
Fuck.
vehicles. And I'm like, oh wow, what a great innovation. I don't have to unlock these vehicles. They're just there. Unless they're
talking
not,
like-
which means somebody else took them.
World at War or like Modern
Okay.
Warfare.
I'm not snotting on you, by the way. Obviously, we're like around the same
Oh,
age.
no,
I'm just
for
saying,
sure,
like,
no.
well, I'm thinking about old school, and I'm thinking, like, well, there wasn't always progression. Remember those days?
So progression systems that can make or break.
Well,
It's
yeah,
so
and like
restricted.
how you in a free to play model, you have to have an. We don't have to, but there's been this shift to having a like a FOMO model where you want to keep people playing. Like we live in a day and age where games are trying to be the only game you play. You come home and only play that, and to do that, they facilitate that with battle pass systems that require time investment, and then if
Yeah.
you don't get them in the period, they're gone forever. So you
Yeah.
get this fear of missing out. So that again, if you can't play as much as your friends, you're like, I'm never going to catch up. I'm never going to get this content. Why should I play? I'll go play that other game that's trying to be the only game I play ever.
Correct me if
So,
I'm wrong, but Battle
yeah.
Pass was started by Fortnite, right?
It was
So you'd pay-
popularized by Fortnite.
yeah.
I believe there are a couple games that did it first.
Okay.
I'm gonna use cheeky Google.
Well, from what I remember, Battle Pass, like in my head, came from Fortnite, and I could be wrong. They may not be the original one, but that's the one that made
Dota
that.
2 was the first
okay.
game to include battle
So
passes,
Shooter
but
borrowed that from
Fortnite
another
popularized
genre.
it.
Yeah,
Also,
so you pay like
Fortnite,
$20, and then it incentivizes you to try to unlock everything in that Battle Pass by playing day in and day out, right?
Yeah,
Or ranking up or getting.
yeah.
So, battle passes are an interesting one because if you are too aggressive about give me that money and buy the stuff that you could potentially unlock, then you're not really incentivizing the people that can't afford it, but are also playing a vital role in keeping your population big. Like you gotta piecemeal them too. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's like a greed balance aspect here. You want like a team that focuses on holistically like the player experience, like someone that spends no money and wants to enjoy it. But then you have to like collaborate with the MTX person who's responsible for like making sure that we pay the light bills and that we have jobs.
Yeah.
You know,
Incentivize people to
there's
pay,
a tug
yeah.
and pull there, and I think that if you go one way too much and disturb that balance, that's when games can collapse. Right? Like
100%.
I remember Spectre Divide had bad press because the fan base thought that the pricing on MTX was way too high. Do you guys remember that? I mean, look.
Oh,
Yes,
me. I
I do
didn't know this
vaguely remember that.
existed.
And
I
I,
don't remember
think that
specifically what
that can
happened.
kill a player base immediately, just like in
Oh, yeah.
an initial like curiosity sense, right? Like I didn't download it yet, I want to play it, but oh my god, it's like. I don't
But players
know
are
how much.
turned off by what they perceive at least as greed. Halo Infinite's another good example of this. When Halo Infinite came out, not the meme, but the chant you kept hearing was, "Why the fuck do I have to pay real life money for the color blue?" Right? Halo. I'd like to just be a blue Spartan, please.
Mhm.
And I think there's. Or go ahead, Jay. Yeah.
No, you're completely right. You're completely right.
Yeah.
It's perspective, right? Because you have to think about why people buy skins. And I'm not an MTX, expert or anything, but do you know what I am? A fucking whale. I spend a lot of money
you're a whale, huh?
in games.
You
I
single-handedly keep people employed. Good job.
I do.
We're talking with people that use this term just today. Okay, so as much as you're comfortable, let's hear it raw from you. What's the most that you've spent on a game, and which one? Maybe give a range if you don't know exactly or don't want to share.
I've spent when I was younger over $2,000 on Dota 2, which is a free game.
Really?
Over years, over fucking years, to the point where I didn't know how much I spent, and somebody was like, "Do you know you can check?" So I checked, and it was over 2K. And I was like, "Whoops!"
Yeah.
But Dota 2 is great because I then sold all of my cosmetics and made half of it back. So
okay, I in the interest of fairness, I was also a little bit of a whale for PlanetSide 2. I remember, and that's like it's not exactly pay to win. It's like pay to unlock stuff that's supposed to be side grades, but a lot of it's just better. Fuck, I can't remember how much it was. It was at least a couple hundred, for sure.
Yeah, no,
I'm
carry on, Tina.
So Eric looked up an article about how much a skin was at launch.
Yeah,
It was like the cryokinesis skin bundle was $90
fuck off.
Wow,
at
Fuck
launch.
off.
And then
that can really hurt. It's like you're saying, Tina.
And so but the good thing is that they reacted to this feedback almost immediately and reduced costs by 17
You've
to
already
25%.
damaged. You've done
But
so much damage.
So high.
Yeah.
That's
So-
like one bundle is like buying a box copy. Maybe a little more than a box copy.
I felt I bought a COD skin for $20 because I told myself I just want to see how it feels, but I really wanted it. It was I think it was 2019 Harangi, a Korean character dressed up in all black, cool respirator on his face, and I thought this is cool. I kind of waffled on it a bit and was like, fuck it, I'm gonna pay, and I dropped the $20, and it was neat. Like, and I enjoyed playing, Warzone, DMZ, and stuff as that character. But I felt like a little bit of shame over it. I don't know about $90, man. That is quite high. I felt that over 20.
This is exactly what I'm on about before I got into calling myself a whale, which I am. You have to think about, why are people buying skins? And that is usually because they want to feel a certain way. And a lot of the times it's because they want to feel like they've got something exclusive and they want to kind of flex on other players.
It's also very personal too. It feels like you are making a very personal choice in representing what you like and what you are, and other people can see it. So here's the other kicker to this. When you're making a first-person shooter and you can't see what you're wearing while you play, how do you display that purchasing aspect of it so that the player who bought it can enjoy it as well?
Well, that's
At least you
my
can
point.
see these arms, right? While you're holding the gun and doing all these reloads.
That's not going to do it.
You're exactly correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing, this nails it on the head for me, my point is, I don't think a lot of people are buying skins for themselves to look at. They are buying skins because they want other people to see them as that thing. And this is where you get into perspective.
But you still want to showcase it in some unique way, right? Like in Apex, I love how they had banners into the maps where you could see your character if you were doing well.
Yeah,
right?
There's
In
loads
your
of ways
full
you can. But if you think of it this way, what I think, I could be wrong, I'm sure there's been loads of studies into this. I believe a lot of players are buying skins for, one, they personally like it, and they want other people to see them in that skin. Now you make a community think that the skin you've bought, you are dumb for buying it because it's too expensive. Like, why am I paying money to be blue? You see someone who's blue and you're like, they're dumb. They paid money for that. They're stupid. So then people go, well, I don't want people to think I'm dumb, so I'm not going to buy that thing.
You think it's a peer pressure thing?
I think it's a push and pull of like, I want to flex on people, but people are just going to take the piss out of me because I just spent $100 on a thing. Right?
What's interesting
you have
is
a
that
crown on your head, by the way. Just want to point that out. Thank you, Eric, and thank everybody who's used the crown. Please go ahead, Tina.
There could be some of that, but I also think if you're under 18, which in most cases a lot of shooter players are when they shouldn't be, you're asking your parents for money. Asking for $20 is much easier than asking for $90 or $70.
Oh, of course.
And I think there has been features and incentives in MTX provided to kind of go around what you're saying and solve that, Jay. Like limiting when a specific skin is on sale and then it just disappears, right?
More FOMO. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like almost providing a self-regulated rarity in your game. Like I think rarity is a big one.
Rivals did this. Yeah. Lots of games do this. It's a difficult job, and pricing is a huge thing. Player perspective from the inward and outward facing
it's not even
really
just
important.
a player issue, though. I want to share something that I had to deal with on multiple games, which is the art team. The art team spends so much time and meticulously crafts and cares for what characters look like as like a baseline, right? And then you're like, oh, hey, fuck all of that care that you put into it and make like someone in a snowman outfit. And that's going to like ruin their whole aesthetic. And also like it sometimes hurts morale too, because they're like, oh man, like I made this cool character and you're putting them in like, a tuxedo with like a ballerina tutu. Like I'm not going to like that.
Yeah, for a meme and social post. I can speak. I know I've talked about it before in previous podcasts, but I can speak very directly from this because I was the lead game designer and essentially in a lot of ways the creative director for Insurgency Sandstorm. And when it came to post-release and we decided, well, we need to monetize the game, but nobody else is doing that in the tactical shooter genre. Not the Valorant Spectre Divide tactical shooter. I mean like the original tactical shooter, like the military style, low time to kill, minimal HUD, etc. tac shooter. To my knowledge, and I'm ready to be corrected on this, we were the first ones to do it. Arma had a little bit of monetization, but they were in enclosed packs and it included guns and stuff. It was more like an expansion. For us, it was purely cosmetic and added into the game. And it was fucking hard to be a realistic, quote unquote, like an authentic military shooter game that you have to keep raising the bar every few months. And I personally agonized over this a bit. I'm very happy and I feel good about the things that we released. I would be very nervous when the community would check it out, but I think we managed to keep a pretty decent aesthetic, at least for the updates that I worked on. There were a couple missteps, and we could talk about those. But like, I just got to say, I totally agree with you, Tina. It's really fucking hard to maintain an aesthetic. It's so easy to just take a game and get lost and do whatever's fun. In a sense, I think this kind of started with Team Fortress 2 and the hats. I think that sort of set a precedent for saying that, hey, let's just be a little silly. It's okay. It's just a hat. Team Fortress 2 has a terrific aesthetic, right? That kind of Norman Rockwell inspired style, those colors. It's a shame to me. Like it takes me out of it. I know it's a multiplayer shooter. I'm not exactly trying to have a story, but like I like to feel immersed in the world. There's a lot of good examples of multiplayer games like that. Neo Tokyo is one of my favorite examples. Half-Life 2 mod. You could get absorbed into a vibe and then have that broken by somebody wearing a top hat, right? And that's how I felt playing Team Fortress 2. And I feel the same way when I play Call of Duty and I see some character from The Boys run around the corner and shoot me with an AR. Like, it doesn't feel right.
That's something
it's very challenging.
That the team can establish sort of like guidelines ahead of time when you're making DLC. But eventually, if you're going on like year one, that kind of all goes out the window and you're like, whatever, just throw in, seasonal.
I think at a certain point, you're too deep in it. You're in the plan. And leadership says, look, like we need something here because we have to, because it works. The problem is that it works, right? Everybody needs to understand that. Post-release content, monetization of it works. I think we finally found a way that I do still personally believe, like, it's okay as a concept to sell people stuff at a fair price that's just cosmetic. It's better than paying to win, right? Paying for like gameplay oriented stuff, or even like quasi gameplay stuff like PlanetSide 2 again, where it's like you're just unlocking it, but you could grind for it, but it's really going to take you a long time. The problem is that it works. It's nice because if you like a game, okay, you're supporting the studio, you're supporting more updates. That part makes intuitive sense. So I won't call it like an all evil thing, but we have to unfortunately acknowledge, and now at this point in the industry, deal with the fact that it's preventing other games from innovating and coming out. I talked about Tribes a couple months ago, I think. If Tribes did its cool innovative thing where it was like, oh, here's infantry combat and vehicle combat, and here's our cool innovation. Let's just say the original Star Siege Tribes or Tribes 2 had a monetization model. Would we have ever gotten Battlefield, which was an innovation on that formula? Maybe not, because we would have just monetized the shit out of Tribes for years and years. And DICE, in their effort to challenge that and innovate on their formula of infantry and vehicle combined arms stuff, they would have never had the opportunity because everybody would be fucking playing Tribes, buying money.
It's interesting that you're saying
buying
that
money,
innovation is being blocked by so you're suggesting it's blocked by the live service model and the free-to-play model.
I think it's I think so, yeah.
I would disagree with you because live service allows you to add new features and additions to your game to make it better for the player. I think the problem here that we're seeing in our industry right now is a lot of investors are saying, I want this specific shooter. I want this specific
Fortnite.
game. I want a Call of Duty. I want an Apex. I want, and it's not even and there's nothing added on top of that.
That's fair. You do get the space to.
I just want to make a joke. With some of my close friends, we would always joke about how we're all just R&D Fortnite devs. Like if we make something and it's like a cool feature, it's going to be in Fortnite at some point. Especially for a shooter. So, I think it's good. Yeah, no, it's wild.
I think you make a good point. If we have a healthy live service model, we can put out some cosmetics, don't break gameplay, hopefully keep the aesthetic sense, and that gives us a space to do like a new game mode that's creative and interesting. It's what it sounds like you're saying, and how live service can support innovation. But I think the reality is, no matter what happens there, you're doing it within the existing game, so you're inherently limited. You're limited by that audience. You're limited by that code base. You're limited by that aesthetic, right? That I think is, again, like it's not a bad thing to have a game that you really like and support it and have more of its content. Every time we did a Sandstorm update, by the way, that had cosmetics that were paid cosmetics and monetized, we had free cosmetics, we had free maps, we had free guns. So like those things straight up would not have existed, been able to be delivered if we didn't have some form of monetization, and players appreciated that. So again, I'm not down on that model, but there is a consequence, and it's innovations, I think. Even though we were able to do, as you said, Tina, some experimental modes, some other cool content, because we had the live service model.
So we've been focusing a lot so far on the superficial aspects of a shooter, right? Like the MTX and the skins and things like that. But I want to dive into some other major pieces that play into whether a shooter lives or dies. One big one is character design and map design. I don't know which one you guys want to tackle first.
How about character? Okay. I feel because of the work that I did on Sandstorm, it's even up on screen now. Like I did all the character customization, so that's something I'm kind of passionate about. I think that it's kind of like we're just talking about now, right? Where you have this pressure to make yourself feel cool playing as this character or that character. The design of that is really hard because you can't just look like whatever you want. You need to be able to tell who's the enemy, who's on your team. You need to be able to see the character in the environment, in this environment versus not see them in that environment where they're supposed to blend in. You also need to make sure that you make characters that you can tell the role at a glance. I think Concord, a lot of people criticize Concord for a lot of reasons.
Eric, can you pull up the Concord character designs and show that?
One of the things Concord could have done better with the character design, in my opinion, there's a good video on this I'll try to find later, maybe link it in our Discord. you need to be able to look at a character and say like, okay, that's the flying one. That character is going to fly really far and move really fast. I'm going to anticipate that. As a new player, that's helpful, right? But there were a lot of these characters that you see on
Zoom
screen
in
now.
on enhance. Zoom in some of these. What?
Eric, zoom
Okay,
enhance.
wait. Okay, so I didn't get to play Concord. I downloaded it and then it like
A lot of people didn't get to play
I
Gold
did the
Wars.
mom thing and then they killed it. Okay, so zoom in on any character. Watch. Let's do this. Zoom in on any of the characters, Eric.
I gotta find that video too. I'll try to find it now.
Go ahead and do that. I'm watching the
So-
delayed version of our stream, but
Take a look at those characters and tell me what you think they do while I try
Okay.
to find this video.
okay, stop on the blue girl. Okay. So we got
That's her name, ironically. That's Blue Girl.
Miss Thing right here. Okay, she's carrying what, like an assault rifle. I bet she could carry like some of the bigger weapons, you know, like a giant sniper on her shoulder. Okay. I don't know if character class was a thing in this game. I'm going to assume it was. I feel bad
The
for not knowing
characters
this.
themselves had different abilities.
So
but
she's a tank, right?
Well, that's the
She has-
thing, and
she has
that's
a
what
bigger
I'm saying
hitbox.
is there were big characters like that. I can't remember that one specifically, and I was looking off the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But there's big characters like that you say, oh, that's the heavy. As a new
You
player,
just
I'm going
assume.
to interpret that as the heavy. But then it's actually like a rushing person or the person that flies. That kind of inconsistent language is a part of character design
Interesting.
that can be frustrating because a player just doesn't understand what each character is supposed to do. You know, you don't start these hero type shooters knowing what everybody does, knowing all their abilities. You have to be kind of eased in. You don't really get that so much from a game like Concord.
Yeah, I think
So the character design, you're right. Personality is like one thing that it takes, like effects, animation, outfits, costume design, like all of that plays into if a character is interesting or good. And what I'm looking at now, you're right. I can't like really understand just by looking at these characters in Concord what they are essentially for. Like I think the lady with the green armor and that lady, you can tell like she's a heavy tank
she's
type.
yeah.
But
Eric, I'm going to show you the video, by the way. Continue, Tina.
But yeah, if a character flies, where's her jetpack? Is that
Let's,
visible? How does she fly? Is it just like an innate ability like Superman? Where's her cape? Like I don't know. What you gotta communicate to me here that this person can fly.
Let's,
But then you say that as a baseline, right? But then when you get into DLC and you download like, you know, the Christmas skin and you're just like a snowman flying through the air, like that goes all out the window too. So it's
let's
just so
zoom out
frustrating.
slightly, right? Let's think about realistic military shooters. Let's think about Battlefield. Which is
Okay.
a series I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Nearly everyone's wearing the same outfit in like previous ones before they tried to add heroes and then gave up on that. But let's look at Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4. When you
For good
see
characters?
someone, not necessarily good characters, but good reading, because based on what weapon they have and what like equipment they have on them, you can tell what class they are.
Yes.
Yep.
In
They're
a
an
realistic
engineer.
military
They're
Look at those
assault.
big
Yeah.
look at those big earmuffs and that hat. That's the engineer. Look
Yeah.
at that stalk sticking out of his back. He's got a rocket launcher. I'm a tank. I have to be careful.
It's
That's
engineer,
good character
yeah.
design, right?
The rifles for the scouts, you've got that guy's got an LMG, right? Like you can at a glance. Well, I played a lot of sniper when I played Battlefield, so I got pretty decent at recognizing what kind of class setup the person was from a glance of being like, that's an engineer. My friend's in a tank, like you said, Mikey. I need to take that person out, right? And that's not necessarily a character design thing. That's well, it kind of is, but also a
It is.
equipment design. And like, how do you signify knowledge? Like, how do you impart information visually?
Yeah.
It's character design.
Yeah.
It is character design. And speaking of Battlefield, Jay, I think we could talk about Battlefield 2042, right? And some of the problems there is when you do, first of all, there weren't really classes, but when you do characters that are just kind of looking cool in whatever way the artist intended, and somebody comes around the corner, you look and you go, okay, that's like one of the 12 different skins that are hot right now. I
Yeah.
don't know what that person's going to do to me.
What does it do?
So Battlefield sort of broke its own practice in doing that with 2042.
Yeah. Siege is another
Man.
one where it takes a while to get to it, but I can see any character in a game that's extreme. The time to kill, and I think we should talk about time to kill in a bit. But like the time to kill in Siege is extremely low. Like it's one shot to the head, dead. Even at high stakes like that, I can look at a character down a hallway and tell you exactly who it is and exactly what threat it poses to me. Like, oh, that's Capcan. I need to not enter any
Even
of
with
these
all
doors.
the skins?
I haven't like when I played a lot of Siege, I don't remember there being a lot of skins. Maybe that's changed, and if so, maybe my point here is null and void. But
Yeah,
back in the
'cause
day,
Siege, you could just
it was
buy
gun
new
skins.
characters. That was the thing, right?
I think there's an effort though to maintain the silhouette, but I'm not really sure. It's been a long
Yeah.
time since I played Siege.
I'd have to dive back in. If
So-
Nick was in,
Anyway,
I'm sure I'd be able to
Tina,
tell us.
Like,
beyond
in
character
it-
design, what was the other? Oh,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to mention to viewers how much thought went into like character development in Apex, because I can personally speak to that as the producer. So every character started from the very beginning with a narrative designer, an animator, effects artist, and the character artists or concept artists as well, and the game designer. Like they would all get in a room together and discuss what character we want to make, what abilities are they going to have. And in order to define a character's personality, I worked with every department and I said, what is your touchstone for this character to make sure that's really strong and communicated easily to every other department? Like they all had to work in tandem together to understand what kind of character they're bringing to life. So, for instance, with design, they were like intentionally just focusing on what are their abilities and what do they do, right? And then and everyone else had a mission where like an animator would decide, okay, this is the like touchstone for our character movement. Like they would look at, I think one of them was Groucho Marx, and the narrative designer would be like, oh my God, why would you say Groucho Marx? We don't want to write Groucho Marx lines. And I would say, no, you don't have to. It's just to help everyone else understand how they're going to move in the game, right?
Yes.
That's just something we can understand. As a narrative writer, they would say, okay, well, here's my touchstone or character that I want to focus on to bring a character to life, like, a shy, uppity, like little girl or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we would understand that, and we would understand what their animations would be. Then effects would go in there, and focus on like the design abilities and what unique characteristics they wanted to bring to it. So there was always, and the sound designer too was always involved. Like from beginning to end, every department that would touch this character knew what was going to happen, knew exactly what the aim was. Like if you don't have all these departments working in tandem, understanding each other, the character personality is going to fall apart and it's not going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in order to like throw MTX into the loop, because you're a free to play game and a shooter, we started marking the geo of a character with landmarks, just like areas of the character geo that should not be manipulated or changed or removed, right? So like Lifeline had some rope or like a medic pack on her left thigh.
So in terms of like silhouette and like keeping.
So if you were to do a
consistent between
DLC
skins.
skin, you would have to replace that medic pack with some other item that like would take its place, right?
But it's got to be
Sticks
there.
of, like,
Some kind of
Yes.
mesh has to be
Yes.
there. I'm laughing because the headache of designing a character just
It's
became
so
a
fucking
migraine
crazy,
when you
yes.
added monetization, right? It gets
Oh,
so
dude.
much harder.
Yes,
And I know
gotta
exactly
take that
what
into
you mean.
consideration. And then the landmarks were good too, because then it helped animators understand. Okay, well, like if I have these animations in the lobby or whatever, there's always going to be something here on their left thigh, so I can't make a swinging down arm motion because it's just going to clip through. Like it's going to look weird, right? So they knew like what. There was always a confidence in like, okay, there's always going to be something here. There's always going to be here. So you can't make any animation that kind of gets in the way. There's just like a lot of nuance and care to making a character personality that I don't think people appreciate. And then on
This
top
is
of
one
that,
character, right?
you got to get the audio team needs time to find that perfect VO actor, right? That'll just bring it all together and bring it to life. And that's not easy either.
This is one of the big challenges, I guess, of that hero shooter design, or that hero class design, right? Which transcends just hero shooters, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
It's a real challenge.
How many characters did you have in Apex on launch?
I want to say there was 7 or 9, but we already had like 10 or 12 in flight.
Yeah.
So that was hard too.
Could you
because-
explain what in flight means? That might be a little inside
Sorry.
baseball.
Yeah, sure. So we had like the established list of characters we wanted at launch. And then we already were working on the DLC characters we were going to drop within the year after the launch. But they were already in progress because it took about 12 months for us to finish a character from beginning to end. But we were a super small team. So to hedge our bets to make sure we always had a character for live service DLC that had a drop, we had I worked with one of the design directors, and we made sure that there was always 3 characters in flight or in progress for each season. So that if like the other 2 dropped because they weren't good, we would just move and keep pushing the other characters that weren't like really fleshed out or good yet to a future season. So we were always hedging our bets with like, okay, here's a character we like. Out of the 3, we should always be able to get one that we just continue moving down like the workflow pipeline.
Yeah.
So
The planning.
Yeah.
The planning.
adding live service on top of like creating a game is just so chaotic too. Because you can't just launch a game and be like, okay, we're done. Good job, everybody. We got a shooter out and people like it. No, when are they going to get their new shit? When are they going to get their skins? When are they going to get their new maps? Like,
Maps
you're already
is
working on that stuff months ahead of time before you even launch a game to make sure that comes out in the time
That's a
that you want.
single aspect, right? Like this.
Yeah, we
might
haven't
be
even
in a
talked
certain-
about map design yet.
So
That can make
someone-
a great shooter too.
Someone in the chat who worked on Apex says 8 characters, 6 plus 2.
There you go.
unlocked.
Thank you. Thank you. Who was that? My hero. I can't even name the starting 8 anymore. Anyways.
It was Johnny, Keith, Patricia. What? Yeah, I can only name 3.
Oh, stupid. I thought you were naming the person in the chat.
No. Oh no, that is Johnny. That's Johnny.
Yeah, that's Johnny Apex.
That's
Okay,
Johnny
cool.
Apex. in the chat.
Jonathan Battle
stopping by.
VR Apex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
He's an expert,
Level
a
design.
subject matter expert.
So maps
Apex.
make or break a shooter. If you don't
Oh,
like maps,
oh, yeah.
they're gonna fall. And a lot of
Yeah.
shooters follow the like 3-lane map strategy
Yeah, the slot machine strategy.
or small maps or a big
Yeah.
battle royale map that just all goes out the window.
Yeah, so that usually revolves around. I'm going to boil it down to a very basic level, but it's usually 2 points of respawn, or they adjust based on enemy locations, and then there are 3 lanes that will, no matter what direction you walk down, you will encounter an enemy, most likely walking down that same path. So you're always, and it's like a slot machine. You're always going down. And maps are usually designed in a way to then shift spawn points. But even when they're shifted, there's still 3 lanes to go down. And when we say lanes, this can
Those
be
are for
corridors through
small
buildings.
maps, like TDM
Yeah,
maps.
small ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tina,
And it's
quick
yeah.
digression. Sorry, it was Aaron Rutledge. That's the one who made the
Oh,
Apex.
UI guy, what's up, bro?
There's a lot of developers in the chat, believe it or not, everybody.
Hell yeah.
We're quite a popular show among the people who are on that grind, making
Amongst
the games you
devs,
love.
yeah. But
Sorry, Jay, please continue.
no, sorry. Map design is a tough one, and it's affected by, just like with most things in game dev, it trickles down from a bunch of other systems. Your map can be flawless, but if your spawning locations are out of whack or your time to kill is out of whack with that map design, it can feel like ass. So it all needs to be tested and like adjusted. Spawn locations is a huge one for me personally, which is interesting, Tina, because COD is kind of
level
famous
designers
for its...
usually have a huge impact on where those spawn points are, but I feel like level designers, like really good level designers, are hard to come by, and they're just like the best are extreme amazing wizards of their craft, just being able to understand how enemies may flow through your map, or like where cover should be, what cover heights are, what works best, how many doors do you want, how many sight lines are there available.
Framing, yeah.
Like they care about all of this stuff. And then you have to work in tandem with environment artists to make sure that they know what you're going for, right? And they don't disturb the piece of your sight lines and the map that you
1,000%.
have.
Yeah.
But environment artists have the difficult job of like putting a great, fun, interesting looking locale within the framework of your geo that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just
inside baseball. Sorry, maybe we want to explain what geo means.
Just the
Lockout of the level.
Yeah.
When we make levels, it's all just simple shapes. You could call it gray boxing or just boxing out. The geo is the geometry of the map, like the literal, just the shapes. Usually, I think the best practice usually is you make a gray box, especially for multiplayer games. You make sure it's fun to fight, and you turn that box into a bus or something, right? So it looks like it fits the environment you're going for.
Yeah. But it's a tough push and pull. When I used to teach level design at uni, the framing is unbelievably important. When a player is going down your FPS corridor and they enter a courtyard, through that door frame, the player is going to see this courtyard, and you as a level designer have to be able to frame that scene to give people information. That can be specific sightlines, windows that other enemy players can have cover from, because if the player gets shot by someone they can see, it can be interpreted as, skill gap, or they got the drop on me, blah, blah, blah. If the player is killed by someone they cannot see, the usual response is, that's fucking bullshit. Like, this sucks, right? So framing is unbelievably important, and working with the environment artist is doubly important, because let's say you have a sight line where as you walk through this door, you can see 2 lanes you can go down and a window in the top middle. And there's a big bus, or not a bus, like a block. There's a big cube in the center, a big rectangle. And you're like, I want something here so players can have cover. And the environment artist is like, cool, I'll put a bus there. And then they're like, now I'm going to set it on fire. And it's like, yeah, that looks cool, but that is immediately drawing the attention from the framing. And the player is now not going to see that window, and they're not going to see these lanes. So the small addition of it, changing what the object is, applying effects to it, changing the lighting, can fuck framing. And it's this back and forth of trying to get it in the right place.
Yeah, sometimes you have to tell an artist, could you make that more boring, please? I need it to be more boring.
Yeah,
you made it too good, and they'll go, yeah, okay, because that's what design wants, and like it's the right move, I think, to do that sometimes.
I won't even pretend to be able to speak as an expert on level design or environment art for multiplayer maps. It's just so
it's very
involved.
nuanced. I think there's a reason why
being important, right? But then you think about a map like Nuketown in Call of Duty, which has like barely any cover, and people love just running out to die. And
that's what made it so special, though.
You know what I mean?
It's just the size of
sometimes
Nuketown.
a map can.
Yeah.
Sometimes a map can be carried on its aesthetic. What's the fucking Unreal 1999 map Beyond Two Worlds? What's it called? I gotta look it up. Two Worlds is largely considered by a lot of people like not a super great map, but it looked cool because you were fighting in space and there was a big old platform. I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna give it to you. Sometimes, yeah.
Is this the one where you're on the big asteroid and there's like the bridge in between the entrance?
Yes, Facing Worlds.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's called Facing Worlds. Here, Eric, I'm gonna show you. This is one of my favorite YouTube channels, Y2K era PC game aesthetics. This is just a loop, so I'll send it to you, Eric. It's good.
Great channel.
It's yeah, of course I would like that, right?
Yeah.
Basically, so as you can see, thank you, Eric, for pulling it up. And for those who can't see, I'll explain. This is the whole map. It's just this platform. That's the map. And it's iconic. There's even a fucking no-clip video about it, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a no-clip video
iconic.
about it.
Yeah.
They just run out to die.
And yeah, you just run out and you fucking die and you get sniped from the
Scale.
tower because it's unreal.
Sometimes people love that. Oh
Yeah.
my god, that's cool though.
And I think this is my theory.
The Earth spinning
part
in
of-
the background really makes it.
right? Part of the
I think
appeal
the
is
platforms are
is
spinning.
aesthetic.
Yeah. If you,
I
if
guess
you go
that's
back,
supposed to, yeah.
just to circle it back to like some of the games that have been canceled or
Yeah.
aren't there anymore. If you look at their maps, I don't know if some of them look very generic and bland, or it's just, the locale and everything can have a huge part in it. That's all. We just wanted to
100%.
mention that having good multiplayer.
Yeah. That's the hardest. That's the most subtle thing, right? I don't think people talk enough about it, Tina, and I'm glad you bring it up. When we talk about why games fail, gamers, critics,
Shooters
and developers all
specifically.
theorize.
Yeah.
But level design is like that backbone that we don't
Mhm.
think about enough. And I was going to say this before. There's a reason why a lot of game designers were also just level designers. Why that term was kind of blended together back in the day, because they did both and they kind of had to, because so much of the core design of the game, the systems of the gameplay, everything tied into and must have been supported by the level design. So like when you play a game like Thief, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like old games that had a very delicate, deliberate design. The people doing the levels, I think, or I wouldn't be surprised if we're also very involved in I need a water arrow because I want to put a torch here in this level, and making other nuanced decisions like that.
Yeah. For a final thing on level design before we move on, and we were talking about lanes. If anyone wants to take anything away from like how to design multiplayer like shooter maps, in my opinion, is depending on your scale. Let's scale it. We're going from Nuketown, where we're still using the lane philosophy, and now we're going to scale it all the way up to Battlefield. Right, where the maps are huge, like with 128 players, whatever. Imagine the philosophy of having your lanes and sight lines and framing, and then zoom it out like a fractal. So your overarching map is that same philosophy just blown up, and as you zoom in, that philosophy stays just on a smaller scale. So you just keep going down and down and down. So if you're stood on a hill, right, you can imagine the things you're seeing, the objectives, the places you can go, as lanes, right? There are multiple objectives. Battlefield does this really well with having objectives A, B, C, D, right? Different places you can go. That's still the lane design, right? That's still framing from anywhere on that hill. It's just scaled up. So just think of it like a fractal.
You're making me think of, because I just ran through that exercise as you described it, and I thought immediately of Strike at Carcant, Battlefield 2 map. This might be a little old for people. This isn't Bad Company 2. This is Battlefield 2. But Strike at Carcant, trying to find a picture.
Another legendary map. Absolutely.
Yeah. Had some great lane design to it. Here, Eric, I'll try to link this one. Oh, it's all fucked up. Here we go. Strike at Carcant had, I guess it wasn't like a firm lane design. The map did have a kind of button hook to it or something. But it definitely funneled players into at least one lane, like the bridge by the train accident and stuff. Here it is in the chat, Eric. It's not a link, it's just an image, unfortunately. Lane design's super important. We didn't lean on it too hard in Sandstorm. We did in a lot of ways, but it wasn't as hard guiding of a principle as you see in a lot of hero shooters and smaller arena shooters.
There are reasons to not do that, right? There are reasons to do that in certain areas, but then through the next lane, remove that kind of philosophy to incite panic and worry and stuff like that. Players get very subconsciously used to these things.
I mean, 3-lane maps
is skeptical.
No, it's just there's no one right answer. It's just
not at all. Yeah.
How do you make, and then verticality?
That's game dev in general. It depends. It's always it depends, right?
I guess like a general thing to keep in mind, and like when you do Battlefield, you have people that could dominate by air. So you on the ground, if you want players to feel like they have a fair fight, you got to give them enough cover in the map so they can escape from vertical, like high.
Same for horizontal with sniping. There's so much goes into it. It's wild. Absolutely.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Tina, because speaking of Carcant, which did not have aircraft, I don't think it had helicopters or planes. But my favorite map, I think, probably Wake Island, had aircraft, helicopters, and planes in a ship. And the planes would really fuck with the flow of the map. Because you'd be like, oh, here I am, I'm attacking the air base. I can go behind that bunker over there and take cover and then move and flank it. I could go right up the middle on the
Wake
road
Island
and
is
pierce
fun.
through the... You like Wake Island? Fuck yeah, dude. I could go through the sandbags, but then one of those fucking power players comes through with the plane, and because he's put like 500 hours behind that jet, can like laser focus on you and blast your ass. It's one of the things I think they made better in the newer Battlefield games.
Good helicopter pilot in Battlefield, man, with the man on the gun. It's just a sight to behold.
What a mood.
So we haven't even touched on some of the other things that can make or break a shooter, like
Just do it.
networking and performance.
Well, sure.
Super
Yeah, of
important.
course, man.
Network engineers are your foundation.
Wizards.
If you make amazing characters and amazing maps, but connecting to a match is ass, like your game's gonna fail.
Hit registration.
Is that the clinical term?
Ass.
Ass. Yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah.
It's super important. Like it's how the player interfaces with the product. If it feels clunky, you're done, right? Especially in a free-to-play model, where the barrier to entry and the barrier to leave is so thin, right? I can't connect to a match. I was using an app today. I was downloading a new app, thinking about trying out a new 3D program and 3D modeling software, and it froze on the login screen, like it wouldn't let me log in. And I went, cool, I'm not using the product. Gone. Move to the next thing. Like, the barrier to entry, bye, see you later. And people do that with
especially
games.
because of what we were talking about earlier, where I'm only trying that. I am even trying this new game is a great allowance to it because I'm so caught up on my League matches, my Apex matches, my Valorant matches. Why am I going to go play another game? Fine, I guess I'll do it. Oh, I crashed at login. Fuck that. I'm going to go play League for another 3 months before I even think about playing a new video game.
I played so much Dota, and my friends wanted me to try some League of Legends. And we've had people on from Riot. I spoke to Feral Pony about this. I spent 5 years, about once a year, downloading League and trying to play it. And for some reason, my computer just refused to launch it. No, couldn't figure out why. It suddenly worked one day, but for 5 years, and every time I download it, try and play it, and it'd be like, this doesn't work. And I'd just be like, go fuck yourself then. And just move on. Because
I like when you swear, Jay.
We had
That's
a
'cause I'm
comment
British.
that I want to read from AK.98 in the chat. He said, X-Defiant died on its netcode not getting fixed early enough. So they must
Definitely,
have
I'm
had
sure.
connection
And
issues.
AK Dot was praising, I think, the level design earlier, right? AK saying like, "Oh yeah, I'll stand by X Defiant having god tier maps when we were at it." Yeah. So I mean, it's just like you're saying, Tina. Like all these factors are so important. Yeah, and networking, like the game's got to work, obviously. So.
Well, performance is a big thing too, like frame rate, right? Because frame rate is a make or break in a shooter. If you drop a ton of frames and you're like lagging and trying to shoot somebody else, and then you realize, oh, I died like a couple seconds ago, but I didn't know about it until just now. Like that's gonna feel really bad. You know?
Barrier to entry again, right? Like in a free-to-play game, you're trying to reach a wider audience. If your game requires a 4090 to run, the amount of people going to play your game is going to diminish dramatically again in a multiplayer game. That's going to kill your game. So it has to run efficiently.
I think
which is difficult.
One of the big reasons I think we did well with New World Interactive was our original first official game, Insurgency, was built on the Source engine, which meant anybody could run it because it came out in 2014 when the Source engine was pretty established and it wasn't super demanding performance-wise. We had pretty good art. Especially for a military shooter, we managed to stand on our own. It's hard to develop an aesthetic as a realistic, quote-unquote, game. And you can really open yourself up to a big audience by not being too demanding.
100%.
Oh, thank you, Eric. 100%. I haven't seen footage like that in a while. What else, Tina? What are some other...
Sometimes people connect to your server that have really shitty internet for whatever reason at some point. And then, you got to make the decision as a network engineer with the designers, do we just drop this person from the server so that the quality of the match is improved for everyone, even though there's one less person? There's a lot, I don't want to gloss over networking. It's so involved. Like there's like in the
It's
chat,
something we should have a guest on to talk
Beatmaster
about.
said,
I
yeah,
think.
like low ping, tick rates, like where you connect to servers in the world impacts that too. There's just a lot of shit.
I want to get
like
a
rubber
networking
banding.
engineer on.
Being able to, there was like, this phrase was thrown around a lot on a lot of the shooters I worked on, lag compensation. And it was just like a feature that they made where if your speed drops for whatever reason, how does the game compensate for that and predict where you were going to be shooting or where you were going to be hit, so that you feel like you have a flawless matchmaking experience the whole way through? And that is
And for the other user as well, like feeling
Yes.
as if they got shot and it felt legit.
Yes, and then
It's
also
wild.
to, networking engineers working with other engineers to talk about frame rate and making sure that whatever you do in the match doesn't fuck that up too much. Like, okay, well, let's establish how many players we can have in a match where it still feels good, and that's something
Yeah.
that engineers can really help with.
100%.
Like if the characters are all spamming their abilities at once, like how does that mess up frame rate? Like,
Yeah.
there's just so much. And, and you're throwing grenades on top of that and all this other crazy stuff's going on. It's like, I want like players to understand that it's not like networking engineers deserve so much more respect and love. And I wish I could speak better to all of
All of
this.
it.
And maybe we should have someone on that can,
We should get someone on.
because
Hopefully, they
it's-
can translate it for us.
Yeah, it's a whole fucking thing.
It's wizardry. It's wizardry.
I really I remember I might have audibly gasped when I was playing COD 2019 or COD 2022, and you could spawn in a helicopter, and I was in like a big team battle style match. I forget the name of the mode, and I could run around inside the helicopter, and it wasn't at all janky. It was smooth, and all my teammates were in there. We were all running in the back, and I was like, "Oh my god, why is this not super janky? Why am I not clipping through the floor?" It didn't make sense to me. I was so impressed by it.
All right, moving past
Crazy.
that, we didn't even talk about UI, which is a huge thing, and we got an expert in the chat that can help us out too. What's up, Aaron? UI can make or break a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be as simple as not being able to see on screen all the important information you need, like how much ammo you have left, how much health you have left, where your teammates are, where the enemies are. Some people have a simple solution where they
Objective,
put like
yeah.
a silhouette outline on enemies, so like, oh, it's like that's where they are. Do you want to do that? I don't know. A lot of games decide to do that, especially if it's hard to
Outlining the
see
enemy?
people.
Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
sometimes that happens, especially outlining your teammates if they go behind a wall. Like, sometimes that happens in certain modes too. Like, UI can have such a huge impact on all of these things.
I made a video about this.
Did you,
about
Mr. J?
live service game UI, and I may have spoken about Call of Duty
Girl.
during that video.
Their menus are insane. Like, I just want to say one thing about Call of Duty UI. So I remember when I first joined Infinity Ward, the initial goal, and any shooter dev listening, like, this was really cool to learn as like a player first, and then joining the studio. They wanted to have like as few button clicks as possible to go from the start menu into a match. It was like 1 or 2 clicks, and then you're like engaged, and I'm searching for a match, and now I'm in. Like, they wanted it to be so minimal and easy to get to where you wanted to go to play. And that's gone by the wayside now. Like, I think I booted up 2019, and when you involve a feature like accessibility, that can blow up your menus to like the nth degree, where you're like, there's all these damn options and everything's buried under each other, and like, how do I even go to like my friends list? I could not find my friends list in Halo, in the latest Halo game. When I wanted to play with people, I'm like, how do I matchmake with them? Like, I don't even know where to go.
At a shop, at a battle pass. I mean, I go into all of this in my episode.
Yeah.
UI designers are, again, wizards, right? Like, Proxy in chat. Nice to meet you. You saying that it's UI is a big channel for conveying known and unknown information.
Yes.
Damn right. And in a high stakes, like low time to kill environment where like nanoseconds matter, super important. I think a lot of games nowadays, a lot of shooters, kind of forget that, and sometimes plaster a little bit too much information on the screen. It was one of the things in the latest Call of Duty that I criticized UI wise, whereas like I could put down an ammo pack, and there was a UI element for it, and it didn't tell you what key to use to press it, and it didn't convey what it was. So I was just looking at this UI element, being like, "What is this? What does it do? How do I do it?" And I was just like staring at it. I go into the video, but it was like really difficult to understand what to do. There we go. The video's there. And the same with menus, Tina. The amount of interaction costs to getting into a match was really high. It was extremely high. I think it was like, I can't remember what it was in the video. I'm sure Eric will pull it up, but I think it was like 7 or like 9 interaction costs to just starting a multiplayer match. And a lot of that's to do with they're trying to add convenience, right? But it bloats it.
I have a little bit of a theory here, but it's specifically about main menu or menu design, I guess. And I feel like Call of Duty might have suffered from this. So I want to hear what the two of you and people in the chat think about this, especially you, Aaron. Aaron, if you want to tell us your full background in the chat, feel free so people actually know who you are. Osaka Proxy. Basically, I think that there's a big challenge for a lot of UI designers because I actually think, again, purely focusing on main menu stuff here, it's possible to just get it right and for the right next move to be to not change anything. Like you're not supposed to do anything. Intuitiveness, brutalism, minimalism is
in a shooter where they expect innovation. One of the easiest things to do to convey visual innovation is to change up the UI.
Yes,
that's why,
which is a problem for players who are just, and again, I'm purely just talking the menu here, but it's a problem for players who are like, I just want to play a game with my friends. Where do I click? And I think that there's a pressure on a UI designer and artists too, who have to look at it and say like, okay, well, it's a new game and they want it to be different. It was a pretty good flow we had before. We haven't even added that many new features that warrant new button options in the menu, but we can't keep it the same. What do we do? And then you start getting wacky and you start getting unintuitive. You start changing things for the sake of changing them. That I think, and again, this is kind of my question or my theory, causes a lot of unnecessary bad innovation when it comes to menu UI design.
There's so Osaka Proxy says, "Hey, I'm Aaron, previously UX lead on League of Legends, senior designer on Blops 4, and experienced director on Apex Legends. I mix up UI, UX, and game design in fun ways."
There you go. Thank you, Aaron, for coming.
Oh yeah, UI is
anyway, that's my theory. That's how I felt playing numerous games, but especially I think Modern Warfare 2.
Well, you also,
Modern Warfare 2 2022. Yeah.
When you think about UX, it's influenced heavily, especially for like the uber popular games, by what's trending in UX, right? Like the Hulu, Netflix menus are like
someone in the chat just said that.
Controller and mouse is like changing through different platforms is also a huge thing. Something that works on PC will not work on console and vice versa. It's so tough.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother beast when you're like multi-platform because making things work on PC is a whole different beast when you're dealing with a controller. But yeah, that's just one thing, is the menus. But then I want players to understand that when you are working on the dev side on UI for the in-game UI where things are placed, when you have so much crap going on in the game and there's so much information you want to convey, it's really helpful for the UX designers to make what we used to call like a UI map. So what it basically did was showed you on a screen, like if everything was up all at once, where you would place it. And it made it easier for us to make future decisions about where to place new stuff based on like where everything was. That includes subtitles as well. If you do a language that goes from right to left, like why am I blanking? Like Arabic.
Yeah.
That just throws everything for a loop, and you gotta like work on that as well. So yeah, localization is like a completely different beast too.
Sucker Proxy mentioned about like eye tracking and like how UI designers are doing a lot of eye tracking to kind of, see what people are doing, because like where are players looking? This comes back to level design, and the interconnectedness of all of these systems in game dev. Where is the player looking, and why? And is the UI constantly drawing the player's attention from where they should be looking in screen space? How much information are you conveying? Dude, a Psycho Proxy, I want to talk to you. I want to pick your brains on a bunch of this stuff. I'm fascinated by this, but this kind of goes for every aspect of game dev. I'm just like, this is cool. Like, this is awesome. This is really, really cool.
I'll hook you guys up.
Tails, yeah.
All right. So we touched on UI. What else didn't we touch on? Controller schemes and the control feel of a shooter.
Mm.
is a
This one,
huge
I
thing.
feel like I agree all these factors are important in making or breaking and whether or not your game will die as a multiplayer shooter. I feel like this is one of the least sensitive ones, fortunately, because I feel like you don't
I
think so?
disagree, but go on.
Okay. We've figured out a lot of our core loop. We figured out a lot of the left trigger aims, the right trigger shoots, this button reloads, this button sprints. I feel like it's kind of a shame in a lot of shooters, especially, that there isn't more core loop innovation with like the moment-to-moment gameplay. But I think a result of that is it's less risky. Like, I feel like most shooters have similar enough control schemes that they're easy enough to learn, that it's not the kind of thing that will make or break a game as readily as a more sensitive thing like the networking issue or unfair monetization or these other things. I think those are bigger impact, bigger ticket items for gamers. I don't think you hear as much like, oh, I quit this game because I didn't understand or like the controls. But what do you think, Tina?
I disagree with you. So, shooters, you have to respect that shooters are dominated by a handful of games, right? That people have been playing for maybe over a decade at this point, even longer if you're me. If I pick up a new game that sort of resembles a Halo or a Call of Duty, or you just want to know that I can one for one change the control scheme to be the same, like mapped grenades to the same bumper or whatever. I think Halo had a control scheme called fish sticks at one point, so I could play it like I played COD, and it felt great for me because I was just like, oh, going from both games every other night at one point. I was like, yeah, this is great for me. And I think that's important. But what we're not really touching on is the feel of the control, right? Like the trigger needs to feel good when you shoot. The kickback and all of that,
The haptics.
the vibrating, yes,
Yeah.
all of it is just very nuanced, and you need a game designer and an engineer to come together and make the perfect pairing to get this to feel amazing. Like Call of
Sound
Duty
design as well. There's
is
a huge
like
part of it.
it's been around forever. They've perfected that sucker. Like the game just feels good when you play it on the controllers. Like any shooter that comes to market, you want people to like pick it up and feel like I don't know how to describe it. You just the time to push a button and something happening on screen, that needs to feel instantaneous. Like that's just not an easy plug and play.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not just talking about controls, literal buttons, button to button controller layout.
No,
You're talking
no,
about the feel of
Yeah.
how severe is the aim dampening when you go over someone.
being able
How severe is the
to
auto aim?
Adjust
how fast do you
sensitivity
sprint?
on your
Sure.
joysticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that
Yeah,
all needs
yeah.
to be great.
Making shooting feel good, I think, is super sensitive. But I do feel like, broadly speaking, for the genre, we've figured out how to make it feel good to ADS and then shoot a gun and shoot a gun out of ADS. That I feel like is something the shooter genre has largely figured out, so to speak, to the point that I wish they'd try
You'd be
more. to
surprised
innovate.
that some shooters fail at this. Like sometimes it just doesn't feel or look or react the way you would expect, just based on your experience in other shooters. Like
And time to kill's entangled with that as well.
Yeah.
Like the Division I do not like playing, or did not like playing
Yeah,
Division,
no.
because I would shoot someone in a puffer jacket and it would take 5 clips to kill them. I'm like,
Because it's so thick, Jay. You can't get through the pufferness.
it's a thick puffer jacket.
No,
dude.
I agree. I'm talking more like FPS style stuff. Look, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of FPS games that you can play, and it doesn't feel
Well,
good to
I
like.
understand what
build
you're
it.
saying is like you can, as a developer, just pick up any of these like AAA games and be like, okay, how do I emulate this? Right? And no one's gonna give you negative marks for copying the exact feel or reactiveness of another shooter in your shooter, right? Like that's probably something you can copy one for one if you, as best as you can, and
We'll try, yeah.
yeah. So I get what you're saying there, but another thing that I didn't write on my list is hitboxes. Hitboxes on enemies is a huge thing too.
Yeah, if
Mhm.
you've got some shitty, I'm used to calling them capsules nowadays, but
Yeah.
we use both. If you've got a shitty capsule that's like too big, that can be very frustrating for a player. And now with how prevalent social media is, of course, you can post a clip and say like, "Look how I should have fucking hit this guy." Play it back in slow motion in a high frame rate or a high frame count, and everybody will look at that and say, "Yeah, that is bullshit. This game sucks." It's easy to fall into that problem.
100%, yeah.
The bigger the character, the easier it should be to hit them, right?
But this is actually a. I feel like I reference Insurgency so much, but it's so relevant
It's
when we
what
talk
you
about
It
worked
makes
multiplayer
sense.
shooters.
It makes sense.
Yeah, you
we
worked on
we
it.
had a. I remember having a conversation about this with our artists, where I'm like, "Well, look, we're going to introduce female characters into the game for this one. We have to make sure that they're not better or worse hit capsule wise." Because I don't know if this was true, but there were theories in Halo 2 that like you shouldn't play the elite because he's got a bigger head and you'll get shot in the head more. I don't know if that was true, but that's what players suspected.
There was
And
a
if players
bug in
suspected, it
Halo
might as well be.
2 where when you played as the alien race, were they elites? I don't even remember the names anymore. But when you played
They're
as
one
the
of them,
alien
yeah,
race,
yeah.
you could be hit in the back of the head like a sniper shot, and it wouldn't register because there was no hitbox there. So it almost was like an advantage, because if you try to headshot the aliens in the back of the head, you just wouldn't die. So I would run out like in the open corridors and people would shoot at my head. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you can't kill me. But if you did the same thing on a Spartan, they would die immediately. So yeah, hitbox is like,
Yeah, you
It's
can't
all-
have that shit. So when we made the female characters, we made them like the exact same height. We made the torso couldn't be like larger in the boob area. We had to make them like as accurate to the same. Well, I'm not going to say breast
You know,
because I
the
sound like a
area,
goober.
the area of the boobs. You know,
so
there's-
if
there's
someone's running
unfortunately-
sideways and you shot them in the head, they wouldn't kill them.
There's unfortunately no better colloquial or casual term for that area of the
it's
human body other than
I-
boob.
the fucking Twitter post is like, the fucking tit hitboxes on this woman
The
are
tit
fucked.
hitboxes suck. Yeah, exactly. I
titty-
don't want to sound
these
like
titty
that.
hitboxes.
But I don't want to sound like the breast area. So that was the best that I could come up with.
Sorry.
It's all interconnected, right? Because
And it is.
you
Go ahead. Yeah.
the hitboxes are then connected to the area on the character's body, because you don't want to be using capsule, you want to be using volumes, and then because of that then trickles down into character design. Like, you can't have specific, if you're going for like a military sim or something where the time to kill is exactly the same for each character, you can't have someone have a dramatically bigger hitbox because they have a disadvantage unless they have more health, right? So that means it restricts what you can do with the character design, unless you then add systems for health.
In terms of scale, yeah.
Yeah, like it completely all connects. It's, God, man, FPSs are way more complicated to make than they first seem.
I'm catching a lot of flack in the chat for saying boob. Shit. That's funny. I didn't think that was a sensitive term.
We didn't even get to weapon and
Oh,
ability
shit.
balancing, by the way.
Someone said tit box. That's pretty funny. Not hitbox, but tit box.
Fungus.
Go on, Tina.
Just take a moment for Tim. Okay.
I thought more
yeah,
people were comfortable with the human body. I guess not.
No, wait,
I am
well,
fine.
we are pro body people here.
We are. I for one am
Body
a pro
positive.
You're a body
person.
advocate.
Yeah, just like you got parts. Go you. Okay. Weapon and ability balancing. you got to have that on lock, and that's not easy.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna make mistakes. You got to be able to update those issues immediately in a live service shooter, right? So if like you release a character with abilities and it just completely destroys everyone else on the battlefield, you want to be able to adjust that immediately because
Yeah, or players find an exploit or an interaction you didn't account for in testing, which is
Yeah.
very common.
same goes for weapons and grenades and all that stuff.
Yeah, having like one busted weapon can really ruin things. It can make, you could have 100 weapons in your game, but if one is clearly the standout choice because you're basically trolling if you don't pick it, you might as well just have one weapon. Your
The
entire system of
ACR
weapons is
in the
fucked.
original Modern
Yeah.
Warfare 2.
like,
that's what I
what's the
think of
point?
at least.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
what's the point?
it depends on the design. An important part of this is like you have to think, in my opinion, a big way to achieve this in a way that is not frustrating and will not kill your multiplayer shooter is you have to think about not just the balance of the weapons, literally, of like, well, what's the recoil, what's the trade-off versus the ADS time of this one, and it's better, but it's worse for the other, yada, yada, is you need to think about how you get weapons, too. That's a big part of it. The design, the system which distributes the weapons contributes to the balance, right? Let's say the ACR was, as intended, it should have been the best gun in the original Modern Warfare 2. That would have been okay if it weren't for the fact that you guys hear that fucking.
They're here for you, dude.
That's the police department. They're coming by because I'm revealing the secrets of game design. It's been real. Okay, so
bit.
lost my train of thought. Basically, if you got the ACR from Modern Warfare 2 through some other means of like, I don't know, a kill streak or something, right? Where it's a rare reward and you get to be really powerful, but only for a brief period of time, that would have been more okay. But because everybody just, from what I remember, got to the point where they unlocked the ACR and just used that for as long as they could, it was completely imbalanced. You had to use it. It was the no-brainer solution. If the ACR, this is like that in Tarkov and it was a really rare drop, that's more okay. It feels more balanced.
Juxtaposition gratification to make those things feel nice. And I also go back to Syndrome. If everyone's super, no one is, right? Like,
Yep.
you kind of need that space. But like, just like with that progression system, how do you make something powerful unlockable? It kind of has to be situational through kill streaks, but then you get into reinforcement loops of making players who are doing well do better, and just like snowballing that. But that's kind of the Call of Duty thing, right? Like your successes lead to more successes. So it's it's really tough. There's a lot that goes into it.
It's a constant fight to, I don't know, make sure there's no meta, and it's hard. I could think of specific examples of when we did an update and I put out 2 guns and I balanced them and I was so nervous about them being overpowered that I made them boring. Like they weren't fun, and that feels awful. 2 new guns come out in a game update and you're like, ugh, I don't want to use either. They look neat, and I think I did a sort of disservice to the art team, right, by making them shittier. But then we fixed it and it was fine. It's very sensitive. You have to be careful. New content has to be fun at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what we didn't touch on yet, because we've been talking a while about why shooters are failing. Is there any personal reasons that you can speculate on why, like Spectre Divide, Concord? We didn't even talk about all the studios or some of the studios that we've lost that were working on shooters too, with unannounced games. Like Deviation Games was a studio from Treyarch that shut down last year, so we'll never know what they were. I mean, they were working on a shooter, but we don't know what kind of shooter.
Bless them.
Yeah, that's gone. 343 lost half of their staff in 2023 and then downsized even more in 2024. So it's like, what's the future of Halo gonna be like?
Man.
I don't know. The Last of Us multiplayer was canceled. Like, you know, making a multiplayer game out of a single player like that's tough.
That's tricky.
Some MP experts in there. I'm just speculating. I don't know if they had a live service team that was like, you know, tried and true, but it's not easy to just switch from making SP campaigns to MP live service. Like that's a huge different mindset twist in development.
Different
like,
philosophy in every category.
That's one of those instances, honestly, where I see that and I think that might have been the right move. Like, I don't know if you guys played any Uncharted multiplayer. it was fun. It was neat, but it wasn't like it really pales in comparison to like the mainline single player experience, right? It's I applaud them for trying, but like you got to think about your resources and your efforts and your strengths, and make your strengths even stronger in those cases. So I think it was probably a good call. As long as I hope nobody got laid off over it, though.
I don't know, but as a studio, there's a huge structural change and shift when you go from SP to MP. If you don't already have an existing MP team, especially live service, when you're going to be updating the game constantly, like that, it's a whole different ballgame. And to Sony's detriment, I think, at least from what I saw from the outside, is when they expected a lot of their studios to shift and provide live service content for a lot of their games. Like a lot of them didn't even have the infrastructure to begin. Like, where do we start, right? Like even something as simple as how they manage their depots in Perforce. Like they weren't ready to have multiple branches of the same game in different, timelines.
Good point, Tina.
Yeah, it's just there's so much factors, and then like a studio I worked at that did SP, they didn't really grasp the concept of a deadline as well as a studio that worked on MP constantly, right? Like if you passed a deadline on an SP campaign, it's just like, what's the harm? Like no one is expecting this right now, and we can just delay our ship date, right? But in a live service game, you promised season 1 or season 2 or whatever DLC, marketing already began for it. You're still working on it. If you miss that deadline, that's gonna be a huge kill.
Very damaging. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the devs, like just their day-to-day workflows and understanding of the significance of a deadline is completely different too. You can't just say, hey, AAA studio, make me a live service game. I want money. It's like there's so much that comes with it that that's probably not appreciated by the person making that decision.
Yeah. Man.
Anyways.
Game dev.
But yeah, let's speculate on our personal level here about why some of these shooters are failing.
Yeah, hey, here's another one I feel like we have to mention real quick.
Sure.
It's not just even specifically multiplayer shooters. It's
just
all
games.
Of gaming, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of theories about that. You could go with the cyclical theory of like, oh, it's just a cycle. It's supposed to happen. The overinvestment specifically from COVID, right? The period that happened there, where everybody was inside playing games. More investment comes because it looks more profitable. Then people can go back outside. They don't like. There's a lot of theories on how it happens. But single player games are not immune from this sort of the difficult release consequences. Forspoken, Callisto Protocol, Redfall. There's tons of non-multiplayer games that are suffering from this too. So that's worth saying at least at some point in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're specifically focusing on shooters today. So if people misunderstand, we are focusing on the shooter side.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I feel like some of the core issues are, as Mikey said, overinvestment, expectations, and then the market for the genre itself. Like we were talking about at the beginning of like, why should I play this game over the others? Because I'm so invested in the others. I've paid for microtransactions. I've got skill in it because I've put so much time into it. I have skins. Why should I move over to this game? And then because a lower amount of players are doing that because they're so invested in their Valorants or their Fortnites and stuff like that, there's lower player counts. And because of the expectation of success through the investment, the plug is pulled very quickly. So it's just this cycle, right? There are games like AK was talking about it in the chat. There are theoretical games that can and probably will one day surpass Fortnite and Call of Duty and stuff like that. But when they're trying to when the investments are immediately expecting them to do that and they don't, and they pull the plug, no game is ever going to have the chance of rising to that
Do you think it's
expectations.
a
So
bit
yeah.
unfair for the publisher or the person funding it to just say, "Hey, you didn't make my money back after I don't
Or
know
not
what
even you.
what's
You didn't make my money back. You didn't get me Fortnite money. You didn't make me a billion in like a few months, right? Like,
I don't have enough information to know if games are getting canceled because they're making a minor profit.
yeah,
I don't know if that's the case.
yeah. We'd have to get a publisher on. What publisher has cancelled the most shooters in the last 5 years?
Or how about
Let's get them on.
a rich investor? Let's get a rich person on here.
I
Say,
would
hey.
genuinely love to hear from an investor and
Yeah,
hear like
yeah.
their process of deciding how to invest and what they want
Mm.
to see.
Yeah, you know, all the risk that they have to calculate. It's as you're speaking, Jay, I'm thinking about like great innovations over the past decade in gaming. I don't know, DayZ, Minecraft, uh, Escape from Tarkov. These were all really innovative games, right? That did a new thing and they blew up. And I wonder about how the investment conversations went. And I wonder about those investors. And I wonder if they thought, oh, I see it. I see how innovative this is. And I also wonder how many of them even had investors, right? Like, I don't know how many investors Minecraft had back in like fucking 2011 when it was coming out. It's
Yeah, the innovation is
none.
what sold it, not the IP, right?
exactly. And it was just some person.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
X Defiant had what? How many different IPs did it have going for it inside of it? Like all of Ubisoft's shooter adjacent IPs within it. You'd
Rainbow
think, wow, what a gold
Six.
mine.
Their executive producer was my boss on Call of Duty.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six, The Division, some other stuff. I can't remember. The IP isn't necessarily what's driving that. It's the innovation. Yeah, we are over in every single genre in gaming in general. We are oversaturated with games. You know, there's so much to choose from. But the games that are innovating and doing different things, not always, but a lot of the times they shine through the muck and it attracts players, right? The
This
IP can help.
conversation's making me a little sad.
Mm. Yeah,
'Cause
well,
I just
we
wanna
are
play
talking about why
multiplayer
games
shooters.
that probably
Yeah.
didn't deserve to fail or be
Yeah.
shut down have been shut
I
down.
think
You know,
to make a
it's a sad
AAA
topic.
shooter with live service and to make the money that some investors expect it to make, the amount of humans it takes is
Oh
astronomical.
yeah,
You got like, then Battlefield has like every studio under their umbrella working on it, like the new Battlefield.
Yeah, they're
That's
marketing that hard, by the way. They're like, look at they show the cool map and they show this studio over here in England and this studio over here in North America. It's yeah, they're pushing it hard. I hope that I'm excited to see what they got going on.
I think
Yeah.
it's smart to do this. I think not to pull words out of your mouth, Tina, but we'd spoken privately, us three, about this stuff happens in the industry all the time. They're just now doing it front facing with what they're doing at Battlefield. And I think this is great because what I have speculated on is this kind of why should I play this game over that game when I have investment on this one? Allowing players to get in on the ground floor and be there during alpha testing, you'd be surprised how much ownership players feel over a product when they helped on making it. They're super invested in wanting to make the game better, which is great. Like they're such a fantastic tester, and also they're probably going to come play it on release because they feel as if they were involved in that. And I think it's a very very smart, super invested. And I think that just snowballs. You know.
Yeah. So competing against the Fortnites and stuff of the world, you need like a 1,000-person team, if not more, and that doesn't even include the marketing. Like I don't even.
And that requires a lot of investment, like an obscene amount of investment.
Yeah.
The space might
So
be
tough.
changing. Who knows how much we're going to see that for a while, or if ever.
And it seems like the shooter genre in particular always goes through like trend following. You know, we used to have seasons as DLC, and that was popularized and taken by COD at some point. It's like season 4 is coming out. get your money ready. And then it turned into Battle Pass and was like, hey, everything's free to play. Buy this Battle Pass, buy these skins. So I just don't know what the next iteration of that thing is. I don't think we've seen it yet, but I personally think that, yeah, there was a lot of investment from a lot of people hoping to get a big chunk of that pie, right? Initial investment saying, hey, I want like the billions that this game makes, make it happen. And a lot of people took up that mantle and ran with it, trying to make it happen. And then we're seeing the aftermath of that, which is very unfortunate for the devs. Yeah, game development's interesting in that you are hired by a studio, you work at that studio for as long as you can, no matter if you have a game in flight or you're waiting for a prototype to start. And so when there's layoffs, it just kind of sucks. Like on the flip side, the movie industry goes from movie or TV show to movie, and then your like contract with that company ends, right? So you don't hear of layoffs.
Yeah,
in the
that's
industry.
just the nature of the beast in that industry.
Yeah, it's just so different with creative in
I think
video games.
one of the things that I think a lot of probably investors seem to forget is that Fortnite, is an example, did not come out to immediate success, right? They had a tower defense version, which I played in like the Alpha Friends and Family stuff for that, and it was kind of rough.
That's why it was called Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was about the mode, which was about...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't hit that success immediately, right? And then, you know, through trying to innovate on another success as a ditch effort to try and make a new mode for people to enjoy, it became one of the most profitable IPs in gaming history. And that just speaks to letting devs cook and experiment. Yes, this was probably a 1 in a million chance, but they were given that space to do so. And the profits that Epic have seen from doing that is unbelievable. Like, I think we have to give a lot of props to Epic for allowing their devs to do that. And when successes happen, they try, and when they don't, they kind of remove it. Like, do you guys know what happened with Paragon, their MOBA that they made?
I bought it and then I got a refund.
Yeah, I did as
They
well.
release
They
all
gave me
the
like
art?
200. Yeah, they released all of the models they made for it for free. They refunded everyone who bought it. Mainly because they could, because they made $1 bajillion.
I want to make it very clear though, Jay, you're saying this from a company that makes a ton of their fucking money from the engine.
Yes, for sure. But also they also made,
from the engine.
but they have that facility through their engine to then allow their devs to experiment, to lead to things like Fortnite.
Exactly.
Right.
It's kind of like what you were
That's where
saying,
a lot-
Tina, right? It was
yeah.
like having a live service model does give you some security where it's like, well, as long as we release the cosmetics next update, sure, try a new game mode. Let's try to get our players to come back with something fresh. Or another map. And that'll be free. So, yeah, I get what you're saying, Jay. It is easy to give away things when you have more money than God, but they also could have hoarded it. So...
Yeah, they don't have to do this. Like,
I don't think it's fair to hold studios to the same standard as Fortnite's generosity, because Fortnite has a huge, like piggy bank with selling their engine to every company that needs it.
Yeah, 100%. But, Sony have a huge piggy bank from, owning one of the two major consoles. And they could allow the Concord devs to see where it goes over a process of a year and then reevaluate instead of pulling the plug immediately. They both have a lot of money. It's just, what are they doing with it, right? And the successes Epic have seen, in my opinion, have come from not being too greedy with that money.
I see. So you think you're implying that Sony canceling or pulling Concord was greedy? Is that what you're saying?
Hello, Sony friends I have at Sony. I think it was simultaneously, I understand why they did it, but also I think a lot of cancelled games should have a little bit more time in the oven. If you've invested what has been debated hundreds of millions into a product, allow it to have some time to breathe and some time to iterate when it comes out, rather than just pulling the plug and wasting that money and hard work.
I don't know if I agree, because Conquer was in development for a while. Like,
Yeah, we could talk about the
Concord
actual
started-
dev of Concord for a long time. I'm just
Like-
talking about not specifically about Concord, but
Dude, their all-time
Games like this
peak
in a
in
whole.
7 months on Steam was 697 players.
on Concord.
No fucking way. Yes.
Concord wasn't
No.
out for 7 months.
Or I guess it's well, when did it come out? March.
Maybe this was betas,
August.
like maybe betas.
So it counts from the betas. Okay. So when it was free.
August 2024.
Yeah.
But like, okay,
August
so let's look at it
2024,
the same
yeah.
way. What was the peak players of OG Fortnite?
Dude, on Steam, 697 players is your all-time peak. Like, there's no way I'd want to keep paying for that fucking game, even if I was a mega billionaire. That is crazy.
Fortnite. It's hard for me to Google while we're doing this. But yeah, like if we compare that to like what were the numbers of OG Tower Defense Fortnite? Were they really low? And then the game mode they added led to
It sounds like you're making the point that it's sometimes worth it to let a game that doesn't have a strong release cook and bake in the oven a little more, because something special can come out of that. The team needs time.
could.
It sounds
It's
like what you're-
rare, but it could, right? And if you've invested hundreds of millions into a project and there's some time, like you could give it a little bit more time to cook
They
after
had
release to
they had
potentially have
1
a
million
return.
registered players the first month of Fortnite.
1 million. That's
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah, so that's still
good.
good. I'm assuming Concord had nil. Like a number so small that it wasn't even like worth continuing, unfortunately. Like Steam should have people that play games on Steam are more willing to like jump between multiple games than
yeah.
I would say console players, right? Just as a behavior. And if you have less than 1,000 peak concurrent players,
Oh yeah, no, I am not in any way trying to say that I think these games shouldn't have been cancelled or like stopped support. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing that happened, but I understand the investors and publishers' decision to do so. The amount of money invested, the returns they're getting, the forecast for like how many players they have, completely get it. But also, game dev is a business of taking risks. We never know that a game is going to do gangbusters, right? Like even with Call of Duty, even though it's seen continued success for so many years, you never know. The next game could, for some reason, do terribly. We don't know. We're
It's a
risking
fair
it to
point,
try and
yeah.
give people, take more risk.
I'm noticing the time, and Eric's pointing out the time to us too. Do we want to get to the donos? I'm not sure if we have time for the game pitch.
no, we should get to the donations. I'll start reading.
Yeah,
them.
let's
Okay,
do
cool.
let's do donos.
Craig Smith for $5 says, it goes to show that no matter how much COD degrades itself, nothing can best it. Far too many people have pledged their loyalty to COD for alternative.
I don't know if I
Where-
understand that last part. Pledge their loyalty to COD for alternative. Craig, if you want to give more context. I assume
like they're not willing to leave
Yeah.
the game. I think
Okay.
that's what he means.
right, because they're too invested in it. Yeah, I see what you mean. But also there's a dismay there because of how the perception that it's degrading itself. Yeah, I'm not a fan of a lot of what COD's doing at the moment in regards to the hyper brandedness. I do think that it's a bit of a shame with they have like a fantastic art team, obviously, like some of the best in the industry, and it would be cool to have a game that had a more unified aesthetic with that art team instead of a team that's focused on let's do a T-Rex, lol, or a Gundam, lol. It's like some of the.
But that
it's a
Gundam
shame.
is going
I
to
would
keep
like to.
all the devs employed for another year, so that's the problem.
I get that, and that's the problem.
And
It's like
people
we were
buy
talking
it,
about
yeah.
earlier. It's
Yeah.
People like it, and they want to do it, and like. I mean, look, I designed monetization myself, and I see the power of it, and it kept our team employed. But we have to look at this a little more I guess objectively is the term, where we have to say, yeah, like these are the positives, but there are negative consequences of it. And one of those negative consequences is less innovation and less of a game aesthetic. And that's like not even debatable, right? Like you don't really have an atmosphere. You don't really have much of an atmosphere to the multiplayer of Call of Duty.
Less unified.
I think you're not going to get
unified.
Investors agreeing with you when they see a game like Fortnite dominating every single like measurement known to man for games, and they have no sort of unified aesthetic at all. You could look at any screenshot of Fortnite and you're like, what the hell's this? It's because they have so many IPs entering and leaving at any given time, so many collaborations. I don't know if saying stay away from that is going to get you the funding that you want to make a big shooter.
That's the problem. You can't stay away from it. And again, like not even applying a value to this of like this is good or this is bad. This is what Call of Duty has chosen to do. It has the bonuses that we're talking about, and it has these negative consequences. And one of those is less of a room, less space for innovation, and in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of most artists, a worse character aesthetic, a worse overall aesthetic, or less of a sense of aesthetic because you're just shoving in branded things.
I think it's hard to say that they're not going to have innovation just because of an aesthetic change. I'm going to highly disagree with you on that. I feel like every Call of Duty that I've ever worked on and that my friends work on is always changing something up, and it's always changing and adding new features to every fucking game, and that's why they always keep growing in scale, because there's always so much being added to the new one. And I think that's what's insane about Call of Duty is that they continue to innovate despite what people expect. So it's
I can acknowledge some of that.
People want some of the old stuff, but they also want new. And I feel like COD has a really perfect balance of finding how much of that new to add. You know, like the Warzone came out in 2019, and that's just like now it's a staple. Now we want it with every COD game. It's like
That's fair, but you could easily argue that's Battle Royale. Somebody else did that, and Call of Duty did its version of it, right? When I'm talking about innovation, I'm talking about like a brand new style of something, not something that's so deeply inspired by another market trend.
But you say that, but then like every person that played what was the Volition game?
Saints Row, Red Faction.
Red Faction went from the sandbox, isometric view, shooter stuff to a third-person shooter, or was it first? I don't remember. Same title, Red Faction, and people shat on it to death. It was an amazing game. I thought it had perfect marks across the board, and no one wanted to play it. Yeah. Yes, and this is a perfect example. It was like a popular franchise. They innovated, and people said F that. So I don't think innovating for the sake of innovating is actually, like, once you have a player base, you can't just rip the carpet from under them and say, here's something new with the same name. You can't do that.
It's a subtlety, right? Like, what is good innovation? What's going to be well received? Mm-hmm. I applaud the Red Faction team for trying to do something different. The move from first to third person was indeed a risk. But we can applaud that, and we could say, well, they did try something, because the reality is whether we say innovation is good or not, we assign a value. You do have to some degree, most of the time, to survive, right? Like, sequels can't just be the same thing over and over. There's classic examples of game series suffering from that. Far Cry, I think, is a good example, and plenty of others. Assassin's Creed, we're going to see, right? Just within the next couple of weeks, how well they balance the attempt to, as you say, and rightly so, give players the stuff they like from an IP or a game series, but also try new stuff. I will acknowledge some of the stuff you're saying about Call of Duty. Like, I was impressed with how innovative the single player was in Modern Warfare 2, 2022, and going like, wow, each one of these levels feels different in a Call of Duty campaign. Finally, like, I thought that was awesome. I love DMZ, but shit, like, it sucks when you have all of that team power and all those resources, and there's stuff that you can't do with it. It's a consequence of this, even just not assigning the value. You have too much at stake to be able to say, okay, we're going to try a new bold thing. You have to maintain a lot. And I mean, if you look at Call of Duty, like, the reality, I think, is they can only innovate so much because too much of what's established is low risk.
Yeah.
maybe you know more than me, Tina, because you worked on the team. Maybe they're actually pushing innovation real hard. But as a player, I don't see it as much in the past few Call of Duties over the past 5 years. 2019 was nice, but ultimately, it's not able to push the boundaries that other games with less investment
value,
can.
right? Like I saw accessibility become like a huge thing in their game. But anyways, we're way past our.
It was a
This
good
is its
question.
own topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's plow through some more of these questions.
I don't want to back away from that question though, so we'll have to get
Let's
to it
come
in
back
another
to
episode.
it. I like when we don't agree,
that's the
because
topic.
otherwise it's boring,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We just agree with each other.
Okay. Andy C says new FPS game has to either pull existing players from other established titles or attract enough newcomers to sustain itself. It's a hard position. Totally agree.
100%. Yeah, we
Yep.
spoke about that. Couldn't agree more, Sandy.
Montekia says, Tina, any nuggets about Titanfall 3 you can share that won't get you in trouble? Any details about what it could have been? No worries if not.
I want to hear this.
Get me in trouble? I mean, the game was canceled. What? My favorite level was from a designer who's retired now, but is mega talented. His name is Jake Keating. He worked on Call of Duty as well. He had a really cool level where time was sort of stuck in a loop. So things would go forward 5 seconds and then rewind. I don't, it's 5 seconds, maybe it was 10, I don't know. But like the whole level, all the like enemies, all the AI and all that stuff, like it was just moving forward and then rewinding. And so you saw like Titans come from the sky and drop down to the ground really hard and then go back up. And it was a
Cool.
platforming level that was really fun to get through.
That's just given me a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No, it was a cool game. There was a character. There was enemies in it. Like what's his name? Mirage was originally an enemy in Titanfall 3. I think Wraith was originally a character in Titanfall 3 before we pivoted to Apex Legends. So some of that stuff got reused.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can speak to the details of the campaign levels. I don't like. It was cool. Hopefully, they revive it. I don't know. I thought I was a single player producer for them for a good 4 or 5 months, and then we shifted gears after EA purchased us to Apex, and then I became a battle royale producer for live service. Okay, next thing. Eric donated. Eric, why'd you donate? He says, I just wanted a free-to-play game with no MTX, constant updates, fast customer support, fast and full game servers, and constant listening to the right side of the fan base. Me. Is that too much to ask? I don't know how people are going to pay for this.
You bitch, Eric.
I think that's
he's being sarky. He's being a sarky little bitch.
He's being sarcastic. Yeah, Eric, you don't have to donate. Thank you, Eric. Our producer donated to our own show. That's how much we believe here at Second Wind and Dev Heads, I suppose, is the interpretation.
Thank you so much, Eric.
All right. Fungus Finder says 2142 rocked. So Battlefield. The gang's HMG got plus accurate when fired.
Oh, yeah. There was some wacky fucking gun. And we're not talking about Battlefield 2042 that came out a few years ago. We're talking about Battlefield 2142, which was rad. Came out after Battlefield 2. I forget what year. They had some wacky designs. Future games struggle sometimes, especially finding their aesthetic. This one, I guess you could argue, struggled in some ways, but there was some interesting stuff. There was a toaster gun that broke open here, and you put a big box into it to reload it. There was some cool things
We just
in there.
appreciate the name The Gons. The Gons HMG is like fucking awesome name.
It's a German word.
I love that.
It means let me get the direct translation. I studied German. Ganz can mean quite or whole or entire or wholly or like complete. The entire blah. That's the Ganz.
So
it does sound like
nice.
a cool word. Yeah.
The Gons.
You gotta make a game called The Gaunts.
The Gons.
Ganz.
All right.
It'll be an all-encompassing game.
Yeah. Dark Jekyll says, after considering several tangential questions, I've arrived at what time of day are you most effective in a shooter? Thanks for the stream, y'all. You are most effective during the day when kids aren't playing, before school gets out. That's when you'll have probably
That's
the
a good
most fun
answer.
if you're not skilled. because when the sweaty kids jump on and they're gonna destroy you, that's usually like after school hours. That's yeah.
I think it's the magic hour is just before food, just before the evening meal. You know, like when you're playing when you're younger and you're sweating it, you're absolutely dominating the match, and your mum's like, "Jay,
Time for
tea's
dinner."
ready. You fucker, I'm doing so well." Like that's the universe just lines up where it's like you're having a great time, but you gotta go eat your fish fingers, mate. So
I'm
off you
sorry,
pop.
Jay, but that was just so delightfully British. As we all know, when we get tea, that's
Yeah,
when we're most
100%.
effective. Is right before tea time.
Yeah, right
I
before
also-
tea, mate.
I would also say around the holidays, major holidays like Christmas, because that's when a lot of new people come into a shooter.
Oh,
So you're gonna
good
get
point.
noobs, and that they call it like a noob Christmas for all the pro
Christmas
players. 'Cause they're
Day.
like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas
You're
Day
gonna wreck a ton of
before
kids.
Christmas dinner, mate. Peak gaming hours.
Or how about New Year's Eve and everybody's shit faced, but they got home early and they tried to play.
Yeah,
You probably think you're great if you're off your tits.
Yeah.
All right, Blistered Soul says so many single player games lost on canceled multiplayer shooters. Wasted time and talent, bleed of single player studios like Blue Point for nothing.
I mean, Tina, Titanfall 3, but it led to Apex, and Apex is one hell of a game, you know. And I think early on in this podcast, you mentioned that a lot of the team, it was the team's decision to do that, right? Not
Not the
overarching. EA
Yeah, didn't
thing.
you guys convinced EA? You were like, we want to do a battle royale, and EA was like, but what about Titanfall 3?
Yeah,
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, it was in the contract to deliver Titanfall 3. So
Crazy.
there was a lot of discussions between the higher ups about that.
Man. Yeah, so it goes both ways. I agree with you, Blissed Soul, but also these sweeping decisions to dramatically change things, make some multiplayer things, do some stuff, it can lead to something great and also loss. Again, game dev is a massive risk. You just got to hedge your bets.
I will also say, if you're working on a shooter right now, a good indicator of whether it may be good when it comes out is how often your entire team plays that game. You need to be playtesting every day, as many people as possible. If you find that a lot of the team is saying, I don't want to play today, I don't want to play this week, I don't want to play next week, that's a bad sign. Playtesting is crucial.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I, as an observer of all the designers on Apex that I was honored to see, was they would go home, they would play PUBG, and they would tell themselves, I think we can make this more fun for ourselves. I think we can make an experience that I want to play at home that we would enjoy. And that's
Yes.
what Apex Legends is for them. And that was just fun. That was fun for me as a player, but also as like, a super fangirl of these guys. Like to see, up close, it's like, holy crap. They're there to make an experience that they personally enjoy, but also to share with other people, right? Like it's not how do we make a game with a ton of money that comes in? It was never about that for them. It was, hey, we enjoy PUBG, but I think we can do it better. Or we like this other game, but we think we could do it a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think I got an idea. And then they ran with it. That passion, you can't just force a studio to say, have passion, make this game fun.
That's the innovation I think Mikey's talking about. That's the pushing forward of the genres
see.
in the industry. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mikey. But like that's what I get from speaking to innovation.
It's a good topic. I'm certainly not shitting on Apex, Call of Duty, AAAs. I'm talking about how there's certain consequences when there's a lot of money, even too much money, into certain IPs. And one of those I think is you can't take as many risks in innovative designs.
Yeah.
But that's, as you said, Tina, like we'll talk about that another time. That's actually a really good topic in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right.
Just on a general level, saying that, if you have a lot of money to spend and you don't want to take too many risks with it, I think that's a completely fair thing to say.
Even if the whole team wanted to do it, now you know better than me, but even if the whole team wanted to do it, what do you think the people with the money are going to say, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've never, and just to throw it out there so listeners don't think, this is the case, but like every studio I've worked at, the people that held the purse strings, I've never really felt a huge like leash around our neck.
Go wait, yeah.
I never really felt them say like
That's nice to
completely-
hear.
yeah. There's always some form of, okay, you guys know what you're doing. You've made us money before. Let's see where this goes. But we're gonna focus test the shit out of it. And if someone says they don't like it, then you gotta change it.
I like that you leaned into the mic to say that part.
Yeah.
It felt like extra scrutiny.
Yeah. It's like, okay, see what people say. Well, this has been chaotic. What a topic.
I think this has been great. Like the fact that I feel like we haven't touched on enough and it's been 2 hours just speaks to the volumes to the topic. So, Mikey, fantastic suggestion. Tina, fantastic management and breakdown of like the individual topics we should talk about. I was here as well. So well done, you guys.
Don't sell yourself short, even in jest. This was a great topic. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Yeah, as Jay said at the beginning, like our guests canceled us, unfortunately. We'll try to get them on another time. But this was kind of a pivot. I kind of threw this out there with the Spectre Divide news. We do want to try to talk about topical stuff too, right? Not just
this is going to be one of the shifts that we move towards is some more episodes that's just me, Mikey, and Tina just kind of sitting down and discussing a topical kind of thing. And to be honest, I think this is a beautiful showcase of like, I mean, I like this. Like, we've all got different perspectives on a thing, and when we don't directly agree on a niche little design, I think that's where the spice is. So I think big shout out. And before we wrap up, we've got one more dono from Snowbound Wanderer, gives $10. Don't know why I went a bit Australian there. One thing that keeps me coming back to Titanfall is the big space western vibes of people building a life on the frontier instead of post-apocalyptic things that seem so common now. Yeah, I mean, the aesthetic of Titanfall was just gorgeous, which is one of the reasons why I think Apex saw the success it did, was because they can use that in the character designs and push that forward for personality. So, yeah, amazing game. Amazing.
More
Does anybody
military
have anything on
sci-fi,
that?
please. I like that about Titanfall. It's risky. People like the modern shit. They like it a lot. But it would be cool, you know. There's a lot of examples of that, but we'll go into that another time.
Mechs, man, you can't go wrong. You just can't go
Mechs
wrong
are
with
pretty
mechs.
badass.
People
More like
that.
paramilitary sci-fi, I guess. But you get what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, I feel you. All right. Well, unless anybody has anything, and if you do, fucking interrupt me. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been a super engaging conversation, not just between us, but also seeing all of your comments and your donations. Like the amount you guys have added to this conversation is really good. We're trying to get better, including your donations and your questions in chat. So thank you for keeping them coming. Just a reminder that, you know, shows like this and everything here on Second Wind are directly supported by your patronage, be that here on YouTube and or on Patreon. So thank you to everyone who is taking time out of their monthly salary to give it to us to make dumb shit. Thank you.
Hope we did this topic justice too. Please let us know
I
how
think
we
we
did in the Discord, because I'm
Yeah, and leave comments. By the way, people commenting on YouTube, we read those too. So please don't hesitate. Let us know what you think. We've never really called 100%. For that, but yeah.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you in the Discord, and if not, we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we're back. So thank you very much, guys.
There's a very I'm sorry, Jay. One last thing I want to plug. Remember the event that we talked about? Just forgot.
Oh yes, 100%.
So I mention all the time on this podcast how I've been obsessed with this Doom 1 tactical shooter mod called Hideous Destructor, which is this like crazy in-depth stuff. I'm bitching earlier in this stream about like, core loop innovations aren't happening enough. Innovation isn't happening enough. This is a mod that I discovered recently that did some really interesting stuff mechanically. And I keep mentioning it. I want to share it with all of you. So if you join the Second Wind Discord right now, Eric, if you want to give him a link, and you look over at that little thing that says events at the top left, there's 8 events, and scroll down. One of those is an event that I'm doing, which we're just calling Mikey Plays Hardcore Doom Iron Man Run. I'm going to play this mod. It's going to be with the Doom 1 set. And just like E1, M1, I'm starting from the beginning. I'm going to get as far as I can without dying. If I die, I'll restart all the way at the beginning, at least to start. Then maybe we'll do a level start. If that's too hard, it makes me cry. And I'm going to show you guys what I appreciate so much about this. And then maybe we'll do a couple custom maps. I don't know. But if you go there and you click on interested, you will show that you are interested. And that's going to be on Tuesday, March 25th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, come hang out, guys. Going to be able to come chat. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I really want to see what you guys think. And by the way, this is a stream. It's not on YouTube. It's just on Discord. So we're going to be able to talk to each other. Mics are going to be open if you request access, and we'll just have a chat about it. It'll be a good, fun hangout. We're trying to engage you guys more, and this is one of the ways we want to try to do it. So it'll be a fun time. Come on out.
100%, yeah. And just to close out very quickly, going to be at GDC. So if there's any devs in chat and you want to meet up, I'm sure that extends to Mikey as well when he has time.
Yeah, I'm at GDC.
Drop us a line.
Yeah. Check out our Twitter, LinkedIn. You know my name. It's right there.
100%. Beautiful. Right. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you to our wonderful producer, Eric, as always. And we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.